Hi, welcome to the Coffee with Lisa podcast. I believe that everyone in business has missing structures and endless possibilities to create new opportunities. The challenge is most don't know how to leverage the relationships for a win-win. I believe that your relationships will make the difference in the results you'll achieve, the impact you will have, and the speed in which you will make opportunities happen. I believe that you can see things through, but you often struggle to see through things. I'll make the invisible visible, the complex simple. Because of these beliefs, I created the Coffee with Lisa podcast and have invited the best experts to join me and share their experiences and knowledge with you so you can move faster and gain a competitive advantage in life and in business. Well, this is the Coffee with Lisa show, and today I have the amazing Peter. Peter, how do you say your last name? Goral?
Yeah, you got it right 100%. Yep.
Very good. Very good. And Peter is a social media business strategist, and he's been working with a multitude of brands and a multitude of verticals. And he really specifically works on like the retail operations, transportation, business development, executive recruitment, digital transformation, their social media. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, clearly. And, Peter is the piece of the puzzle that most brands are looking for. We're going to talk a lot today about personal brands and company brands and what does that look like. So welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining me today.
Great to see you again, Lisa. As always, a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, you know what? We've had, we've had conversations offline, online. I was very excited for today. And I wanted to really just talk a little bit more about brands. But first, I wanted to know a little bit more about your history. Like, where'd you come from? How did you get to be where you are today?
Well, it's a huge story. I'm going to try and put it into like about 30 seconds, right?
Perfect.
If you might catch the odd inflection of an accent, and that's because I actually was born in the UK. Yep. and emigrated to Canada with my parents in 1967, and we still go back and forth a little bit. My wife and I. My wife actually is from Britain too. She's from another part of the country, and we met here. So I came as a teenager, and literally I tried to do this switch off, between the things I'd learned there and the things that were valuable here. So I found myself having to, in a sense, go back to school, relearn, like almost transform myself again. And right. And literally, you bump into things. You do some silly things as a youngster, and I threw myself originally into retail operations. And when I came out of college, I was this creative guy, and I did design and window dressing and merchandising and things like that. And that evolved into don't ask me how. I think it just took a natural course, but it evolved into actually running the operations of a retail store, because I guess I learned it really from the ground up.
Yep. We're in the trenches, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like School of Hard Knocks. The way that you hear about it. It's like whatever I went to school for didn't help me much, right? In the real world. And I'm not saying that isn't always the case, but it wasn't mine, and I just literally bumped into it, and I evolved out and started running bigger operations because I was recruited to. Because I'm a bit of a noisemaker, I make a whole lot of noise, the right noise about me, pushing out my personal flavor and my personal story. And that gets picked up on, and it wasn't very long before a larger organization came to recruit me and said, okay, we need some more entrepreneurial spirit here. We need some drive. We're opening up a new division across Canada. Like you seem to have at least the drive and the spunk to get this going. And that's exactly what I did. And it was a national young menswear chain. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being, my last role there was district manager for Eastern Canada. And,
Yeah.
so I had like 32 stores with groups of people underneath me as supervisors and things like that. So I learned a thing or two about management, the way to treat people, the way to get things done, and at the same time, still building brand, still building my own voice, right? Because I still was that entrepreneurial guy, even though
Yeah.
I was in a corporation. I felt
Yeah.
more like an entrepreneur, at the time.
Well, and I think it's important too to understand is the value that you bring to the table today is your business acumen and what happened in all your experiences when you were in corporate that you bring to the small business world that they might not necessarily have experiences or have had opportunity to have those experiences. So that's important in your day-to-day role now.
Very much so, because I feel like I can offer them a tried and true kind of reference.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, Peter, explain to those who are watching now or who will be watching later, what exactly do you do now? We're talking a little bit about what you did before. Now, what is the role that you play currently right now, and how do you help others?
So the role itself it's kind of a misunderstood role, because every time you put social media into it, you're thought of as this person who like just builds content and throws it out there. I'm
Yeah.
actually more. I added the value of being a strategist, a business strategist to it, and that's because I take a whole complex look at my clients' businesses, and I say, sure, we have to socialize the brand, we have to
Yeah.
build content, but it's more importantly that we have to search for the right eyes and the right ears to consume this content. So I dig down with my clients about who they are actually hoping to appeal to, what
Yeah.
kind of business like falls purposely into their value proposition. Who would they best work with, right? Who is their best partners out there? And then I take that and I literally reverse engineer the activity that's required in order to acquire that interest, as it were.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so it's not just about joint venture partnerships and collaboration. It's also about products and services and how do you position them to the right audiences so that they better understand the message you're trying to receive, but more importantly, that you're not unforgettable. Correct?
100%. I know we tagged this particular session brand relevance, and that is possibly the most meaningful title that we could have added to this, because I'm a believer in the fact that you had to be relevant regardless of what situation you were in, right? And relevant to your specific target, not to anyone and everyone, but to the
Yep.
people who you really are built for. People
Yep.
that, people that just push the thing out and take the shotgun approach, right? And blast out something every day with the hope that somebody picks up and goes, oh, that looks okay, right? Or maybe I should find out more about that. That's not good enough. You need a laser focus today. You have to really understand your sweet spot. This zone where you're immovable, right? You're so good at this one thing that you do so well. It is the most relevant component of your personality, or the company's personality, because the company is really the people, right? So, and those are the things I work with. There's soft little nuances attached to things like that. And we often, in my mind, I think we run by them. We don't give it enough time to seep in and to understand it ourselves, right? We're not.
Do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say we're not introspective enough, right? We don't take a good look at ourselves.
Yeah,
right?
and I think and sorry, I have a little bit of delay on my end, so I'm truly not trying to talk over you by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think when you are unforgettable and your brand is not in line genuinely with who you are. So let's talk about solopreneurs for instance. So you're a brand in yourself. You are the brand. You need to really understand what you stand for, what your values are, and then push it forward accordingly, because that's what makes you your unique proposition, if you will, your differentiator from everybody else. And that's really what you're talking about. Correct, Peter?
100% on the money. And I generally start with, it doesn't matter like how big your organization is. I start with the key people in the organization and I ask them a very small group of very personal questions, things that might seem trivial in the big picture, but they're the things that get you, like it's almost like asking a person their favorite color.
Yeah.
The reality is, what is it? Like, why is it? Right? Like it's when I ask you a question like that, I'm interested in you. I'm not interested in what's going on around you, right? And at the end of the day, that's exactly what your customer is going to see and hopefully interact with. Is this person who blue's his favorite color and he enjoys hockey and he cares about people and he had a tough time when he grew up and it wasn't always an easy cakewalk. These are the kinds of story building factors behind a brand that really go into making up who you are, that unique proposition that you just highlighted.
Yeah. And so I know that there's always, to greatness is always a process in a system. I genuinely believe that. And so I know that you've mastered the process in the system to actually get this information out of somebody, because it's important. And I believe the system and process is really important, because lots of times we don't know what we know what we know, but we don't know how to articulate it, and I believe that your genuine authenticity is the frequency of your greatness, meaning that your actions, nonverbal and verbal, must match the words that you choose. But many people don't know how to get to that point. How do you get from here to here? And that's really where your genius comes in. You're in that in-between zone. And so what is the system and the process that you use to help people really truly understand what their story is so they can be relevant with their brand?
A great question. And actually it spins off that first discovery session with them. And I actually generally spend an entire morning or entire afternoon in a room, like slide in the food under the door, like we're locked down, right? I mean, literally, but with a whiteboard, and we're spilling our guts. Like that's really all we're doing. I'm asking people to just open up to me, because we can make something of this thing together. Now, I usually start by doing the right thing, which is open up to them, right? Because if you want something, like you give to get, right? So I tell them about, a piece of garbage that went down in my life, right? And I mean, really, it's like I might as well tell them the worst thing that happened to me, right? And then they go, at that point, they have an option either to leave or like go, I'm really intrigued by this, and I actually can do one better. And generally they do. Generally, they actually come to me and they say, well, wow, that doesn't top all. Like I've got a story. And I make something out of that, because it's like, it's not like I go and publish the fact that they had an issue, but it shows me the vulnerability of that individual. And it also coaches me, kind of reverse coaches me on how to manage them, how to speak. Like I ask a lot. And my last client, when I asked him, I said, can you tell me what ticks you off? What do you have a low threshold for? I really want to know. And he'd go, oh my God, he says, no one's ever asked me that, right? And I said, and he even said, he goes, my God, he says, like, you're challenging me now to say something I ordinarily wouldn't say anything to anybody about. And then, of course, he says, after we were done, and he gave me all his great answers, And he says, why did you ask me that? And I said, so I want to learn about you. I want to manage you. I want to know if the moon comes up a certain way one day, and I know that you're going to be howling at it. I want to know that I'm going to avoid you that day, right? Like, I'm not going to step into your scenario unannounced, right? Because some people just don't like you stepping in, right? That went unannounced, and some people are more fastidious than others about detail. Some people hate it when you're late, right? Yep. So work on these things, right?
But that really gives an insight into the avatar of the brand, of who you're looking for. Because I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you have a better understanding, like me personally, I hate it. I don't believe that you are on time. If we have a meeting at 11 o'clock and we're like a physical meeting and you show up at 11, you're on time, I believe you're late. Unless, you got run over by a freight train. 5 minutes early is on time. Yeah. But being on time at 11 o'clock is being late. That irks me. But so then I need to find clients who are like that. My brand needs to speak to that particular value. And so these questions that you ask are very strategic as well, because it really brings out the persona of what your brand is going to stand for, but then also who you look for, because you can't be everything to everyone. And I think that's a big mistake that most people make, is that they try to be everything to everyone. And when you do that, you become unforgettable.
That's true. And it starts with how you actually even go out for business, because you should allow your clients to help themselves filter themselves away or to you. Like, I don't pressure sell. Like, at the end of the day, I'm actually a business development executive. That's exactly what I am. I'm not a marketing guy. I actually just utilize the social skills and the social content to attract you to a space where we have common ground. Yep. And then I'm going to take the conversation to that. However, when we get there, I will start rationalizing some of the conversation, and I'll start qualifying some of the conversation and give them an option to go through door number 1, curtain number 3, or stay here with me, right? Yeah. And that has to be the way that selling is gone. Like, good selling is done when you give people this option so that they don't feel so stressed out in front of you that they think that they must sign or they mustn't sign. Like, that's a no-win for anybody. But give it time. Let it fester. Let it steep. I liken it to some really good stew. You got some great meat, some great onions, potatoes, and carrots. Like, they're okay on their own, but then put some gravy on it and let them sit in a pot for a couple of hours, and something amazing happens, right?
Exactly.
Pretty dumb analogy, but at the same time, you get the idea. Like, and it's tasty.
Analogy, Peter, if you like stew, but if you hate stew, you can't be something to everyone, right? So let me ask you this. What do you believe is the number one golden rule to branding, to building a brand that is representative of you? Because we are our brand. What's the number one golden rule in your eyes?
I always say, like, don't lie. Like, don't lie to yourself. Like, be honest. Like, I know I don't want to overuse the word authenticity, but I mean, at least be real. Like, there's something that you are, regardless of what happens to you. When I think, think of the situation that we're all in right now, and there's some really cool things happening. And the people who are remaining relevant are the people that are stepping up and being their human self, giving to others, sharing with others at a time when they can probably ill afford to. I've seen some amazing examples of people, in all honesty, they might be a paycheck away from bankruptcy, and yet they're still the person that steps up and says, you know what, I've got a skill set. I'm who I am. I'll never change. This is who I am. I'm going to give this thing away. And you know what? Kudos to those people, because you've just done something that you probably should have done in normal times. The reality is this thing's forced you into it. I'm going to remember you. Like, when this thing's over, when we can all get back to meeting one another and going out for drinks and enjoying ourselves and actually working hand in glove with each other, you're the one. You're top of my mind. You're the most relevant individual. And I'm seeing so many great things like that right now.
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that you have to give away everything. It just means that you have to be authentic in how you are delivering your service or your skill set or whatever it happens to be, a product and so forth. And let's face it, we all have to make money. There's no question. Because like you said, some people could be one paycheck away from bankruptcy or what have you. But we can be creative in the ways that we support each other. And I think that's what coronavirus is really doing right now to the world, is allowing us the time to actually be creative about how we are going to move forward. And I think you're absolutely right, Peter. I think it's in times like this, in crisis, in moments of challenge, that your true authentic self comes out, your character comes out. And I recently did a post about this. Be careful of the people around you, and their true character comes out in a moment of crisis. And they're either going to be very good and moving forward, or they're going to be maybe not so good. And so you want to be aware of who you are doing business with, or who your relationships are.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
And I think character really, it comes out as to, when you're talking about your personal brand and the relevance of brand, I often say, and I work with a lot of transitioning executives from the C-suite and so forth, or managers who are, they're moving on to that next stage of their career. And, some right now are being forced to do that. But they have all this intellectual property in their brain. They have all this wisdom, all this experience, but they don't know how to get to that next step. And that's where, people like yourself come into play, where it's about personal branding. And often, if they are in those positions and they don't actually create a brand about them, about their personal brand, they're actually doing their bottom line injustice. Would you agree?
Well, I always, in a sense, suggest to people like that, and actually don't keep it away from just them. I mean, I utilize this arrangement with the clients that I serve now, is like, let your potential audience experience you. Yeah. Like you just said, like, don't give everything away. I actually give more away than I should, but it's purposeful, because I want, and I do this in normal times, never mind now. I mean, I literally give away the right ideas and the right advice. And I'm often on a call or often in a meeting that's, literally, nothing, pro bono in a sense, right? And where but I'm learning, right, too, because I'm learning about what's going on in the world through the eyes of somebody else. Yeah. So I had the benefit of having a young man on a Zoom call last week, and he sent me a private email, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I don't know why I did this to myself. I just left a job. I've gone out on my own, and then 3 weeks in, I'm like, boom, like, I'm terrified." That's exactly what he said to me. I'm terrified. And I thought to myself, okay, this person needs to be talked off the ledge, right? Kind of thing. So I said, hey, jump on a call. I'm good with that. Like, just yell at me, like, vent, do whatever you want to do, right? And very bright young man, really bright young man, really has it all together. Just went through kind of a little hiccup, because he didn't plan on this. He planned something bigger, then something else got in its way, as it doesn't it always, right?
always. It's how
he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine, right? In all honesty, he's going to be fine. Because I mean, I said to him, I said, at your age, you could probably mess up for the next 10 years and still have a great chance of being a success. In all honesty.
It's exactly right. Well, and we talked and yes, I said that, you don't give away everything, but I think you can give more. You don't have to give away the kitchen sink, but you can always add value and value and value and have no expectation in return. And I think when you set that as the guideline or the foundational expectation in a relationship, great things will come to you because of that. And so like you and I are very similar in many ways. I give way more without any expectation in receipt. I know that down the road, I'm in it and you're in it for the long haul. We're in it for the long term, not the short term. And I think that's the difference you're talking about selling, is that it depends on, are you a transactional relationship or are you a relationship that's in it for the long term? And when you talk about that, that looks differently, right? So personal brand. So is there a consistency in the challenges that people face as far as, you are your brand? What are the, is there a consistency that you see with the challenges of personal branding?
I think, first of all, a lot of people don't necessarily believe that statement to start with, right? Yeah. And that's why I work through, before going live with individuals, I work through a very fastidious arrangement. Like we're in conversations and we're almost interrogation, as it were, right? But it's friendly, right? And we're interrogating to find the real person. I mean, I ask them very personal things that are outside of the business. I said, because the business is what it is. I mean, you are not made up of a single idea. You've got a collective of people with some smarts, and you're bringing them together. We need to curate that, and in order to do that, we've got to find, why are we doing it? Like, what's in it for you, kind of thing. And I find that even when I give my ideas away, they're nothing unless I brought them into the equation. So I bring in the client's new components. I'd like to think of us as, even in the world, as a mosaic. Like there's a lot of little tiles that go into making up the big picture. Yeah. And the little blue tiles might be financial specialists. The little red tiles might be human resources people, cultural people. Like, and everybody needs to step up and figure out what is that one little thing that they do so well. They're just the one, not a lot, just the one, and put themselves in that picture. And this is what I try to do with, I try to get my clients to understand the dynamics of that and where they actually fit in the world and in their world. Because, there's the world as we know it, the mass, but then there's this tight little corner of the world that they want to be master of by virtue of the business that they're in, right? So it's still relevant.
Yeah. So would you say that their perception is not, so the challenge would be that the perception is not always the reality?
I didn't quite catch that. It blurred.
So I was saying that, so would you say that, to recap that the perception is not always the reality?
The perception is not always what? That last word seems to be escaping me. It's blurping.
Okay, so the perception is not always their reality. The reality.
Okay, drop the word. The reality. Not at all. I mean, they only see it. I liken it to a mirror, right? One of the things I first do is, like, in a sense, here, take a look at yourself, right? What do you see? Most people say, oh, geez, my hair is out of place. I shouldn't wear that color, that kind of thing. And the same could be said of the way that they do business, right? If I echo back to you what I see, and I do, I'd say, well, you look and you present yourself as a very scientific kind of operation. And because of that, And and I'm looking at you. I'm from the outside at your the only thing I can see, which is your online presence and your website. Now, do you mean to be that way? Is that the kind of person that you're? And they'll always say, no. Like they'll always say, I don't. Where did you see that? How did you see that? And that's because they're caught up in the forest for the trees issue, right? So they think they put the design in the hands of somebody who just wants to put the latest website design up, and no calls to action and all kinds of crazy things. I mean, for all intentions and purposes, it's a brochure, right? Whereas I want it to be a living representation of who they are. And I never get stuck on websites and that's why I figure you should socialize your message. You should consistently keep this open, engaging dialogue with your audience, courtesy of LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, podcasts, blogs. You've got to put yourself out there. And I guarantee you the story that you're carrying out will not be the same in most cases as what they see on your website. Because your website, you go there, and if they're not going to put their email in order to get a form, you don't know if they've been there. You don't know who's been there. You can get some Google Analytics. You can get, which are literally vanity metrics when at the end of the day, or you can actually go to a social engagement platform and find out exactly who you're talking to and develop a relationship there.
Well, and I think you're right. I think many people make the mistake. They get caught up in the structure of the website and the prettiness of the website and the prettiness of their brand, but they forget to actually, the more important piece is the content that lies within the website, the content that lies within your social feed, the stories of what you tell.
And in most cases, I think if people would take a very serious look at it, they would tell themselves, I haven't actually said what I'm good at. And if it's sitting there by itself with nobody, speaking behind, it's left to an interpretation, right? So it's a graphic and it's a lot of writing, and it's maybe the writing is just like, redundant and boring. Who knows? You never know how the format is. Like with the process of socialization, you get an opportunity to inflect and say, and show your energy, and show your personality, and show your validity in the market. And here again, show your relevance, right? It all boils down to that. You can't stay relevant in a website because web designers are going to change the way it looks and the way it feels and the way it rolls out. That's just the way it is. It's almost like a fashion, right? But one thing will never go out of style, and that is your personality. And that's why you are your brand, because it's the thing that you own, that you can't transfer to a website, you can't transfer to any other static document, but you sure as hell can do it face-to-face, online, through engagement, by positioning the way you feel about something, the way you think about something, right? That's more important to your customer.
Absolutely. Well, and it's what I know that you know Hank Norman well, and so do I. And, Hank is always encouraging people to press record. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be right. All it has to do is you just have to press record. And you'll be amazed at what comes out of pressing record out of you and it's the stepping stone to creating your personal brand. I have a question for you, Peter, before we wrap this up. So what is the most unexpected way that you've made a brand stand out historically? So what is that one unexpected way that you've, worked with a client?
Interestingly, a new client, and in our first session together, and they asked me, the CEO asked me, what can I do for you to help you with the task at hand? What can we do for you? And my return comment was, I would like you not to think of me as a service provider. I would like for you to think of me only as a partner in business.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a mic for him. It was a mic drop moment, right? So we actually literally stopped the presses during that session. And he went, oh my Lord, he goes, I want to be thought of just like that to my clients. He goes, we've found our mission. We found our purpose. And it's typical that the biggest things come from the smallest efforts, right? It's just recognizing it. And for me, that was like a huge aha moment. I was just being me. I was just saying, look, I hate being thought of as somebody who just drops in, fixes something, helps you fix something, and takes off. At the same time, I don't want you to be dependent on me, but I want, when I come to the table, I want to be part of this thing. I want to involve. I'm going to invest some time and I'm going to invest some energy. And in order to do that, it's best that we partner on something. Yeah. And that's the way I do with all my clients. I partner all the way. The ones that thought of me as a service provider, I no longer work with, because those relationships aren't good enough. There's nothing to sustain them. But when you get deep and you get deep seated and you go and kind of organize your minds together and get on calls together and constantly challenging one another and to be better, that works best.
Absolutely. Well, and and I say this all the time, it's very difficult to see the picture frame when you're inside the picture. And so, having said that, let's say somebody's watching this right now and they can't afford to reach out to you in the moment, and they want to do some work themselves on their personal brand. What would be 3 questions that person could ask themselves that would help them get over that hurdle of really truly understanding what their voice and their message should be about them personally? Because again, remembering that, we can't see the picture because we're inside the picture frame.
Well, I go back to it's going to be very rudimentary, and I go back to ask yourself possibly a couple of really key questions. The first one is and it's usually built around, if I put you in a room by yourself, no internet, no telephone, no friends, no access to anyone, and a pad of paper, what is it that you could comfortably start writing about, blogging about, or writing a book about that you couldn't be caught out on? And what you'll find is that is the closest thing to your heart, and it's the closest thing to your mind that you feel great about, you feel fully achieved with, and you feel so good about that your confidence is at a level that beyond anything else, if you can answer that. The other thing that I ask people is, what is it that you admire about, what are the qualities that you admire about someone else, somebody that you really look up to? And I ask that question because it usually means that it's something that you need to work on, because if you admire it in somebody else, it's because you haven't quite got the handle on that. And so I say, ask yourself, take a look at somebody who's really successful and see what is that one thing that just hits you that you should probably try to be more like, right? And feed that into that. Outside of that, I'd say you literally have to be honest with yourself. You can't lie. When you get up in the morning, if you can get dressed and go at it, regardless of where you are, what is it that you'd want to do? It all has to come down to this one thing. They're all pointing in that same direction. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist. I mean, literally, you can have this conversation with yourself. I've done it. I mean, I've had to do it, right? Yeah. If you want to come out of your shell and you want to start, don't come out with too much. Come out with something that you're so confident in that you can comfortably, if you have to, sell it. If you don't have to, at least let other people experience it so that they might want to buy it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. There's a lady on here, her name is Julia, and Julia came out with her personal brand finally after, navigating through and trying to decide what does her brand represent. And she decided that, most of every action that she does is really about a movement, and it's about being healthier, and everything that she does and embodies in her life is all about health. And so her brand became the Green Smoothie Movement. And it's all about green smoothies and how that helps you moving forward mentally, physically, emotionally, and everything. And so I think, by asking those questions, those exact questions that you said, Peter, helps people to really start to understand what is that one special thing. And when you start figuring that out, then you start creating your brand. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you very much for coming today on being on the Coffee with Lisa show. And although neither one of us had an actual cup of coffee, mine was empty. Thank you. But I really appreciate it. People can find you on LinkedIn. Where else can they find you, Peter?
I have a pretty busy Twitter account at Arts and Clouds. Okay. I'm on Instagram, and I have a moderate Facebook. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, because that is where I'm embedded daily. I'm invested heavily, and of course, I operate my clients' positions there too. So it's a constant churn for me. So that's the place to find me best, and I'm open to most connections that don't try to pitch me something. Because I will stop you right there. Like, do not connect and pitch with me.
Well, and LinkedIn is terrible for that, and it's worse right now just because I think people are running in fear of. So they are, they're throwing spaghetti at the wall, and they, forgot about relation, and everything is transactional. Right. Have you, but I do very much appreciate your time.
My advice to those people is, like, if you do actually want to roll something out, think about it. Put yourself back, walk yourself back a couple of paces, and try to imagine you getting that same message. How would you feel if I said, "Oh, hi Lisa, how are you? Oh, by the way, here's what I do. Bam, 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 bam." You're like, what good is that going to do you? Like, you just shot me. Like,
well, what drives me the most crazy, Peter, on LinkedIn is somebody reaches out after you've reached out and made a request, which is not generic, by the way. I don't do any requests generically, right. But then they start asking me about what are my problems, or the last, what do you do for a living, or something actual already on the LinkedIn profiles. In other words, they have spent no time researching. They've accepted the request, but then they've just
block check. Like, that's insane. Like, yep. Nobody does that. Like, right now, there's so much help available.
But you shouldn't be. Well, and here's the other thing that people need to understand with LinkedIn. You only get 30,000 connections. And I know that might seem a lot. Like, I don't know what I'm at now, 16, 15,000. But every connection that I make, I want to, not that I can make a genuine, long-lasting relationship with 16,000 people. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's almost virtually impossible. But at the same time, I'm going to be strategic, and so are you, Peter, about who we invite into our network. And so think of that when you're thinking about who you're inviting into your network, whether it be Facebook, wherever it happens to be.
A guy that I used to work for used to say to me, kind of a little crass, but he said, "If you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas." He used to say that to me all the time, and I'm thinking, Yeah, you're right. And the counter of that is the fact you're the average of the 5 people that you work the best with, or you socialize the most with. And you've got to think about how LinkedIn was designed. It was designed with its 6 degrees of separation. And so every time that you invite somebody who is actually going to diminish or dilute the value of your own brand to your network, you better think about it. Because if you're gonna invite in a rogue who's gonna go rogue,
yeah,
you're gonna lose some of your good people, because they're gonna say, Peter, you let that guy in here. I didn't let him in here. He's a nuisance. And now you've become a nuisance. So I am now unfollowing you because you let that character in. It's a very slippery slope. I can't, and besides, I can only manage 120 people. Apparently that's the scale, the human ability, 120 maximum in your life ever manage as far as a good relationship. And you don't do them all at once. You slip in and you slip out. You slip on, you slip off. And the reality is, if you've got good ones, I have friends who I haven't seen for 10 years, and we hook up, and our conversation, you would swear, takes off from us when we last spoke. That's loyalty. That's reality. That's true relationships. And that's really valuable, really relevant. And that's the kind of relevance you should be working towards with your clients, with your collaborators, with your friends. End of story. There's no excuse for that other nonsense.
So, Peter, one last question, and then we'll close the show off. And I always like to, I've started to use this question. So my question to you is...
Oops. And we lost her. Just as I was getting a question.
Peter, are you still there?
And she's coming back. Oh, now that was interesting. Just as you were about to give me your question, you faded off.
I actually use the technology to do that, but I think there's a delay. So I'm going to leave the screen, and I'm going to ask you something, and then I'm going to come back.
Okay. All right.
Huh. Weird. All right. So my question to you is this. What advice would you give your younger self?
Interesting. Well, I was a pretty successful younger self. It's a little different. In fact, I'm pretty self-made in that respect, because there wasn't anything that I wouldn't try. As a young person, I had a number of jobs. Even while I was at college, I still did a number of jobs, and I did them all really, really well. And I'd actually say to myself, bully for you for doing that, because I didn't have a really great youthful life, right? As a kid, I had a horrible life as a kid. End of story. It was just miserable. And I find that by the time I got into my teenage years and my early 20s, I took charge of my life, and I did exactly what I wanted to do, which is help people out, drive business, be creative, just put myself out there. And literally, that's exactly what I would tell a young person today. I say almost the way that you see Gary Vaynerchuk telling the young 17-year-olds right now that think, oh, I'm lost. He says, no, you're not lost. You haven't even found yourself. You haven't even found the first impression of yourself. Stop it already. Get over yourself. And I keep telling people, even at this stage, get out of your own way. Stop stopping yourself. Try something. Bust the gut. Bust the ceiling. And it's available to you. You'd be surprised how level this virus has made the playing field. It is totally level. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how famous you are. You have the same chance, because guess what? We're all suffering the same outfall, right? We're nothing. We can't buy ourselves out of this, right? So think of that. Put yourself in the drowning man's position. What do I need? Oh, God damn it. I need air, right?
Yeah.
I have to breathe. So like when you can find something in you that you want to do that passionately, get out and do it. No one's going to stop you. In fact, I'd be the first person that if I spotted you, I'd even give you a hand and say, hey, you know, look at this guy, because he's like kicking butt.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Hustle, do the work.
And as my friend Hank Norman would say, press record.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Peter, for joining us today. I appreciate it. And please stay healthy in these times, and we will be in touch soon.
Cheers.
Bye for now.
All the best.